So we've looked at regular Terminators, but what about these guys? Maybe the skinny Terminators or the fat Terminators will better suit your needs. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel where today we're talking about Cataphractii and Tartaros Terminators. This one's following on from our Terminator video we did earlier in the week, so if you haven't watched that one already, then I'd recommend doing so, because we're going to be a bit more abbreviated and just go into the positives and drawbacks of these two units over your classic Terminators. We'll be taking a look at all the differences, all of their different war gear options, and talking about how I would run them on the battlefield. These two types of Terminator armour are relics that date back to the Horus Heresy, the Cataphractii armour offering additional protection at the expense of some speed, and the Tartaros offering additional speed at the expense of some protection. They both have their specific war gear options, so let's take a look. Both of the units have essentially the same stat line as the Terminator squad that we mentioned before, except that the Tartaros Terminators have a movement of 6 and the Cataphractii have a movement of 4. With their base loadout, they're both equipped exactly the same as the Space Marine Terminators. The squad sergeants have a power sword and a combi bolter, and the regular Terminators have a power fist and a combi bolter. In this edition, unlike previous editions, combi bolters and storm bolters have exactly the same profile, of rapid fire to strength 4 bolters essentially. With this squad configuration, the Tartaros Terminators are 165 points, so the same as the regular Terminator squad, but the Cataphractii are more expensive by 3 points per model, so that puts them at 180 points for this squad loadout, as they're paying for their rather nice invulnerable save, but more on that later. I think that we'll start with the Tartaros Terminators out of the two. I think it's interesting to note that they are the same price as regular Terminators, while having slightly increased movement and a lot more options. I was under the impression that they had some sort of rule that made them less durable than Terminators, but now I've actually had a really good look at the datasheet, that seems that that's not the case. I'm not sure if that was the case in previous editions, and I'm just being slow to catch up with 8th edition, or if I've completely made that up. As far as I can tell, the only actual disadvantage over the regular Terminator squad is that they don't have access to the assault cannon and the cyclone missile launcher, and they lose out on the teleport homer that can allow the Terminator squad to teleport back into your deployment zone. So if you don't feel that the teleport homer is worth sacrificing a point of movement for, and you weren't thinking of getting either the assault cannon or the cyclone missile launcher, then the Tartaros Terminators are kind of flatly better than regular Terminators. And also it does give you access to a lot more nice options. Firstly, instead of the heavy weapon options, one Tartaros Terminator can either take a Reaper autocannon or heavy flamer. The Reaper autocannon is the same weapon as the Chaos Space Marines get, so that's heavy 4, 36-inch range, strength 7, AP-1, damage 1 weapon. The stat line isn't the most inspiring in the world. Being damage 1 but high strength means that it sort of wants to be shooting vehicles but then sort of doesn't, as it's only damage 1. But it only costs 10 points, so it's not the worst buy in the world. Personally, I'd probably just stick to the combi bolter, which will also have 4 shots at 24-inch range, but only costs 2 points. Heavy flamers we already know about, and already aren't generally that amazing because you can't fire them on the turn that you come in from reserve. Tartaros Terminators get the option to take lightning claws. Any model in the squad can take 2 lightning claws instead of their combi bolter and power fist. These will cost you 1 less point than the combi bolter and power fist option. You'll get 1 additional attack, so typically 4 attacks on the charge with shock assault, and they'll be made at strength 4, AP-2, damage 1, and you get to reroll the wound roll. So a fair bit better melee against infantry units, but slightly worse melee against heavy armour, and of course you lose the combi bolter, which is quite a big hit really. If you were thinking about killing infantry with this unit, then having the combi bolters actually does a massive amount of damage, and it doesn't require you to make a charge to do so. Personally, I much prefer the Storm Bolter Power Fist option over Lightning Claws, but they could probably have some application in some niche builds, perhaps in the White Scars Assault Doctrine when they become damage 2, and Blood Angels might be able to make good use out of them as well, with their +1 to wound. I think it's interesting that you can mix them in with regular Terminator squads, but honestly, personally, I prefer to just take the Storm Bolter Power Fists. Any Tartaros Terminator with a Power Fist can also replace it with a Chain Fist, and similarly to the Tactical Terminators review I did, I think that these are a take or leave option. They'll really help against 2 wound infantry and units with a 3-up save or better without an invul save, due to their flat damage 2 and AP -4. But honestly, the power fists are quite good too, so I'd be happy to either take or leave these depending on how much you want to ramp up the unit's melee potential. 1 model in every 5 out of the Tartaros Terminator squad can be equipped with a grenade harness. This, interestingly, is not a grenade weapon, it's a 12-inch ranged, Assault D6, Strength 4, AP -1, Damage 1 weapon, and I think that this is probably worth taking because it's completely free. So it's basically another good reason to take Tartaros Terminators over regular Terminators. Having an extra few Strength 4, AP -1 shots on the turn that you come in from Deep Strike is certainly no bad thing. And if you are worried about killing the thing that you're trying to charge and making your charge ranges longer, then you don't actually have to fire it if you don't want to. Having the option of extra damage output is only really a good thing. Now the Sergeant has some interesting war gear options as well. Unlike the regular Terminator squad, he can swap out that power sword for a power fist or chain fist. This is actually really quite a nice advantage over the regular Terminator squad, because the Sergeant has 1 additional attack, 3 attacks and 4 on the charge, so he really wants to be using those bonus attacks on a big meaty weapon, like a power fist or chain fist, rather than the much less impressive power sword. If I was running these, I'd certainly think about taking one of the 2 every time, possibly the chain fist on the Sergeant, as it's the best value you're going to get out of it as the Sergeant has more attacks. He then has the option to take one of the unique special weapons to the Tartaros Terminators, the Volkite Charger. Only costs 1 extra point over your standard combi bolter. For this minimal price you get a 15-inch range heavy 2 weapon with a strength of 5, no AP and damage of 2, and when you're resolving wound rolls on the target, if you roll a 6 then the target suffers an additional mortal wound. Now I found this one quite an interesting choice. I think it is quite close whether you take this over the combi bolter or not. Being heavy means that it's only likely to be hitting 1 shot per turn, assuming your Terminators are moving, which they're likely to want to try and get into close combat. So you have the choice between 1 strength 5, damage 2 Volkite shot with the chance of getting that mortal wound, or the 2.6 average hits from the combi bolter at strength 4, AP nothing, damage 1. I think the 2 are fairly well balanced. The Volkite Charger will do you better against shooting things like Primaris Marines, but the combi bolter will do you a bit better against things such as Guardsmen. So it really is up to you which one you think you prefer to buy in. I'd happily take either of them. The other option you have is to take the significantly more expensive Plasma Blaster. Now this one is 17 points, so that'll be a 15-point upgrade on your regular combi bolter. It's an 18-inch ranged Assault 2 weapon with strength 7, AP -3, damage 1, with the usual plasma overcharge rule, making it strength 8 and damage 2, but on a 1 the bearer is slain. Now I'm afraid while it's quite fun to put a nice big plasma weapon on your Sergeant, this isn't a very good use of points at all. If you're not overcharging, then the damage profile is pretty underwhelming for quite a high points investment, and if you are overcharging, even if you have a source of reroll 1s, you still do put yourself at risk of sniping your squad Sergeant, who, if you did choose to give him a chain fist, would cost you 51 points. I honestly would stick with one of the cheaper guns for this guy, if you're wanting to optimise the squad loadout. So, summing it up for Tartaros Terminators, compared with the regular Terminator squad, they lose access to a couple of heavy weapons, and they lose access to that free teleport homer, but they gain a point of movement, a free grenade harness, and the option to take a power fist or chain fist on the Sergeant, which is pretty nice indeed. I'd say on the whole they probably outcompete the regular Terminators because of these advantages and being the same points cost, though admittedly the teleport homer rule could come in useful from time to time. I think my squad loadout would be just to max out the Terminators with the power fists or chain fists plus combi bolters. One would take a grenade harness, and I might or might not run the Sergeant with the Volkite Charger. From there I'd be looking to do exactly what I'd do with the regular Terminators. Drop in, maybe use Fury of the First, hose a lot of stuff with the bolter fire, and then use whatever charge buffs I could to get them to charge a hard target. I've been over my thoughts on how to use Terminators in the main video I did a few days ago, so I won't labour the point again now. Overall, if you're going to take Terminators, I would certainly consider the Tartaros variant as a viable alternative. Moving on to the more beefy boys now then. Let's take a look at the Cataphractii Terminator squad. So as we already mentioned, these are 3 points more expensive than either the regular or Tartaros Terminator variants, and they come with a 4-inch move and a 4+ invulnerable save. Now that 4+ invulnerable save is pretty huge. Most of the things that kill Terminators efficiently will have a high AP, and that assurance that you always get at least a 4+ save is pretty nice. The Cataphractii armour does come with an additional downside though, which is that when the unit advances, you must half the result of the advance roll. So after these guys do come in, you're really not going to be going anywhere fast. We already said that the base squad is the same as the regular Terminator squad loadout. These ones don't have quite as much versatility or options as the Tartaros variants, but they do have most of the useful advantages over the regular Terminator squad. The only heavy weapon option that they have access to is the Heavy Flamer, which is a bit of a downside, as Heavy Flamers aren't amazing on a slow moving platform. Maybe consider it if you're Salamanders. Each model can similarly swap out their Power Fist for a Chain Fist, but interestingly they have the option to swap out just their Power Fist for a Lightning Claw. They don't have to take both the pair like the Tartaros Terminators do. So you could have a squad of Cataphractii Terminators with a single Lightning Claw and a Combi Bolter, and these would cost you 34 points a model, aka the same as a Power Fist Stormbolter Terminator that doesn't get the 4+ invul save. I think that's interesting. You could have a squad of lower melee damage Terminators that have a 4+ invul save for the same cost, so a bit tankier, and they still shoot just as well. Personally, I think I still prefer the Power Fist. Even if they don't shred infantry quite as well, they'll still generally make a nasty mess of infantry squads, as well as being able to have the option of taking out tanks too. The Sergeant can similarly swap out his Power Sword for a Power Fist or Chain Fist, which is a nice advantage over the regular Terminators. And again, the squad gets access to the Grenade Harness, but strangely enough it's only the Sergeant that can take it in this squad. So overall, compared with the regular Terminators, they're a little bit more expensive. They have the 4+ invul save, but this does make their movement 4, and makes them very slow even when advancing. But they do also have that nice Grenade Harness and Sergeant Power Fist or Chain Fist that the Tartaros Terminators get access to. I think in my chosen loadout for this squad it will be sticking with the Combi Bolters and Power Fists all the way through, with the potential of upgrading to Chain Fists, and obviously I'll be taking the free Grenade Harness on the Sergeant. So how do they stack up with the other two Terminator variants? I think that it's not as obvious to say with the Cataphractii Terminators whether or not they're a flat upgrade compared with the regular Terminator squad, as you have to pay a few additional points for the privilege of the 4+ invul save while hampering your own movement. The 4+ invulnerable save is going to be really useful against some opponents, say if you're playing Eldar with a lot of high AP blaster weapons and plasma weapons, but might not necessarily have any effect at all if you're in a matchup that's got AP-2 weapons or worse, say Space Marines spamming a whole load of assault cannons or something like that. If you don't find yourself targeted by any AP-3 or better weapons, then you're actually paying for a downgraded squad compared with the regular Terminator squad, as their movement is a bit worse. All in all, I think that the Cataphractii Terminators are a well-balanced unit. They get the benefit of having a stronger defense against some attacks, but have the drawback of being a bit more expensive in points cost, as well as hampered movement. That movement could be quite important if you're trying to get to your next target after you've destroyed the thing that you drop next to, and taken it out in close combat. You do run the risk of your opponent just dropping back from these guys and getting to ignore them for a turn or two as they try and stagger towards enemy lines. Not being able to advance really means that it's quite easy for your opponent to just fall back from them, and while forcing them to cede ground isn't a bad thing, it does mean that these guys won't quite live up to their full potential, which they might be able to by getting in there and smashing stuff up with their Power Fists. Now this isn't necessarily going to happen. You might well be able to charge again straight away with the unit, but it does increase the risk of you not making that next charge, which is quite a big thing. So an interesting unit overall, a very significant advantage that's balanced with a couple of significant disadvantages too. So overall, now we've looked at the 3 types of Power Fist Stormbolter Terminators. My favourite out of the lot are the Tartaros Terminators. They get a lot of flat upgrades over the regular Terminators, and only really lose out on the Teleport Homer, as I don't think that I'd typically run either the Cyclone Missile Launcher or the Assault Cannon anyway, except in special circumstances. I think the Cataphractii could certainly be stronger than them in certain matchups, but might be weaker in others due to the extra movement and paying for an invulnerable save that you might not use. Either way, I think that all 3 of these units are perfectly viable in a Space Marine army, and I'm glad that Terminators have been given the chance to shine again. It certainly feels very Space Marine to deep strike from the middle of nowhere, unleash a horrific hail of bolter fire to shred enemy infantry, and then hopefully charge in and get to work on the foe with power fists. I think it's very nice that the Terminators are powerful in all phases now, and it actually does make them a more scary threat on the battlefield. Thanks very much for listening. If you've got any opinions on the different types of Terminators, please let me know. Is my choice the right one, or is that invul save just worth having for the times when you might get evaporated by high AP fire? Or has anyone successfully managed to use the teleport Homer to good effect? As always, let me know if I've got any rules wrong, so we can all benefit from your understanding. I'm hoping to get a review of Marnie's Calgar done sometime in the next few days. If you've got any other requests for certain unit reviews, or interesting ideas for tactics videos, then please let me know. Again, thanks for watching Auspex Tactics. I'll see you guys in the next video.